Do you ever catch yourself experiencing that strange cycle where on some days you're overflowing with motivation, operating at full capacity, while on others, it feels like someone unplugged your energy source? One moment you're convinced you're ready to change everything about your life, and the next moment the same drive you were relying on simply evaporates. It comes in with a dramatic entrance, wearing confidence like a costume, only to disappear quietly before you even realize it's gone. It's incredibly fascinating how emotion behaves. Motivation feels amazing when it shows up on time, but its inconsistent nature makes it unreliable. Emotion isn't something you can blindly rely on if you're serious about achieving something meaningful. And this is precisely where discipline enters the picture, not as a replacement for motivation, but as its stabilizer. Discipline is what keeps your goals alive when your emotions start wavering. Jim Rohn taught that discipline is the bridge, the one essential tool that transforms what you desire into what you actually accomplish. It's not talent, luck, or inspiration. It's discipline that carries you from where you are to where you need to be. We crave a shortcut in life, but the truth is the only shortcut that truly works is discipline. The willingness to do the things you know matter, especially on the days you don't feel like it. It's the closest thing to a life hack that actually delivers real results. If you want to earn more, feel better, become stronger, smarter, more confident, more stable, and more successful, discipline is the path. People often act like motivation is the fuel that powers success, but motivation alone is inconsistent. Discipline is the backup generator that switches on when motivation shuts off. If you don't take control of your discipline, emotions will pull you in every direction. This is why so many people start strong and finish weak. Not because they're incapable, not because they're unintelligent, but because they rely entirely on motivation, and motivation was never designed to carry that much weight. If you want improvement, fulfillment, achievement, discipline is how you generate a different reality. Discipline reshapes your habits, and your habits reshape your life. This is your shortcut, not an easier path, but the only reliable one. Jim Rohn believed discipline is the highest form of self-respect. What you're willing to do repeatedly, especially when nobody is watching, reveals what you are committed to becoming. You can want success with all your heart, but wanting alone changes nothing. Without discipline, desire evaporates. Without discipline, dreams remain trapped in the imagination. But with discipline, the smallest, most ordinary actions compound into extraordinary transformations. Discipline doesn't scream. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't demand attention. But it quietly builds the life you said you wanted. You may look at others who are succeeding and assume they're simply lucky or gifted. But the truth is much less glamorous. They mastered discipline. They mastered repetition. They mastered consistency. They mastered doing the work, whether the emotion was there or not. And that's what gives them an unfair advantage. Discipline is what turns average into exceptional. You are capable of far more than you're currently living out. But potential means nothing without consistent execution. You don't rise to the level of your excitement. You fall to the level of your discipline. And if your discipline is weak, everything you build will crumble the moment life becomes inconvenient. This is why discipline is the only shortcut. because everything else depends on it. If you're tired of feeling stuck, tired of falling back into old patterns, tired of promising yourself change that never arrives, discipline is the answer. Not massive discipline at once, but small, consistent discipline every day. Because every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen the identity of the person you want to become. Discipline is less about punishment and more about alignment. It is aligning your actions with your desires, even when your emotions refuse to cooperate. Rohn said that success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, not occasionally, not when you feel good, not when it's convenient, every day, because discipline compounds. Miss one day and nothing changes. Miss a week and you feel it. Miss a month and your entire direction shifts. But commit to discipline for 1 month and you'll notice a shift. Stay committed for 6 months and people will notice the difference. Stay disciplined for a year or more, and there is no version of your life that remains the same. That is the power you're dealing with. Discipline doesn't just change results. It changes identity. It rewires how you view yourself. When you consistently follow through with what you said you would do, you stop doubting yourself. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop needing outside validation. You develop a kind of internal strength that cannot be taken away. You become dependable to yourself. That's when life starts transforming. Because if you can trust yourself, you can build anything. You've experienced the frustration of being motivated for a short burst and then crashing. Everyone has. But very few ever make the shift toward discipline. Why? Because discipline requires temporary discomfort. And most people prefer immediate comfort over long-term improvement. But here is the beautiful truth. Discipline becomes easier the more you practice it. The first week feels difficult. The second week feels slightly better. The third week becomes familiar. By the fourth week, discipline starts feeling natural. And once it becomes part of your identity, it no longer feels like discipline. It feels like who you are. The key is to stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a myth. Motivation is unpredictable. But discipline is a decision. A decision that has to be made again and again. If you want to be someone who is unstoppable, someone who builds a life worth being proud of, someone who doesn't rely on mood or emotion, you develop discipline. It is the foundation beneath every great achievement. And once you understand that discipline is the real shortcut, everything about your life begins to shift. You stop chasing quick fixes. You stop searching for magic answers. You stop waiting for the perfect wave of motivation to arrive, because you finally accept that progress is built through deliberate action, not inspiration. Consistency does not care how you feel on any given day. It only cares about what you choose to do. Every choice you make is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. And discipline is that force that reminds you that a single choice matters. A small action matters. One repeated behavior matters. It all compounds, whether you see it immediately or not. There's a kind of quiet power that shows up when you become someone who acts without needing emotional permission. You become dangerous in the best way. You become someone who cannot be easily stopped. Someone who creates momentum instead of waiting for it to appear. Life rewards people who move with consistency. Life changes for the people who show up, not occasionally, but repeatedly. If you want to build a life that feels meaningful, steady, and purposeful, you choose discipline, because discipline doesn't disappear when the excitement fades. It keeps you aligned long after the initial motivation loses its spark. There will always be days when you feel tired, frustrated, uninspired, or mentally drained. Days when the last thing you want to do is the thing you know you need to do. But that's where the greatest separation happens. That's the day most people fall off. That's the day emotion wins. But when you push through anyway, when you choose action instead of excuses, you create a version of yourself that is stronger than your resistance. And that version of you is the one capable of building everything you dream about. The person who relies solely on motivation will collapse under pressure. But the person who has built discipline becomes unshakable. Rohn always emphasized how discipline shapes destiny, not in dramatic, sudden changes, but through subtle, consistent effort. It's like planting seeds. If you plant them and water them only when you feel like it, almost nothing will grow. But if you water them consistently, even in small amounts, eventually something incredible emerges. Your habits work the same way. Your daily behaviors, even the tiny ones, are seeds. And discipline is the water. What you water grows. What you neglect dies. It's that simple. People underestimate the power of repeated actions. They think a small improvement is insignificant. They think one disciplined moment doesn't matter. But everything compounds. Time amplifies your behaviors, whether they're good or bad. One small discipline practiced daily can shift your entire life's direction. One act of self-control can redefine your routine. One moment of choosing your future over your comfort can redirect the next decade. This is why discipline is the simplest shortcut. Because it gives you control. It puts the steering wheel back in your hands. And here's another truth: discipline builds freedom. It doesn't restrict you, it liberates you. The more disciplined you become, the freer your life becomes. Think about it. When you're disciplined with your health, you gain more energy and mobility. When you're disciplined with your finances, you gain more security and opportunity. When you're disciplined with your habits, you gain more confidence and clarity. Discipline removes chaos. It reduces uncertainty. It gives you the ability to choose your direction instead of being tossed around by life. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency. You don't need to master everything overnight. You don't need to transform your entire life in a single week. What you need is the willingness to show up today, and then tomorrow, and then again the next day. Discipline is built slowly, intentionally, patiently. People think they need to take giant leaps, but real transformation happens through steady steps. It's better to do a little every day than a lot once in a while. Because a little done consistently becomes unstoppable. Discipline also teaches you something motivation can't. Self-trust. Motivation makes promises, but discipline fulfills them. When you repeatedly follow through, you begin to trust your own word. You don't second guess yourself anymore. You don't fear challenges because you know you have the ability to act regardless of how you feel. That is a level of internal security most people never experience. And once you taste it, you never want to go back. The biggest enemy you face isn't laziness. It's inconsistency. It's not that you can't work hard. It's that you don't work hard long enough. You start, stop, restart, pause, reset, break, and repeat. You make progress and then sabotage it by falling back into habits that hold you down. You let emotion dictate your actions. But when you commit to disciplined consistency, even if the effort is small, you create momentum that becomes almost impossible to break. It's important to understand that discipline is a skill, not a personality trait. You don't need to be gifted to be disciplined. You learn discipline the same way you learn anything else, by practicing it. You fail, you try again, you adjust, you build. Over time, the effort that once felt heavy becomes lighter. And eventually, what once felt like a struggle becomes part of who you are. People often say, "I wish I were more disciplined," as if it's something you're born with. But discipline is something you build. Every day presents an opportunity to strengthen it. Right now, there is an upgraded version of you waiting to be built. A version of you that doesn't rely on how you feel. A version that acts because it must. A version that follows through because it's committed. A version that doesn't negotiate with laziness or convenience. A version that shows up for the goals you've been talking about for years. You owe it to yourself to meet that version. And the only path to it is discipline. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need permission. You don't need a perfect plan. What you need is the first step, the smallest step, the most manageable step. And once you take that step, take another and another. Because discipline grows by doing, not by thinking. Discipline gets stronger every time you act, even if the action is imperfect. You don't transform through massive bursts of motivation, but through deliberate consistency. Life will always test your discipline. There will always be distractions, temptations, emotions, and excuses ready to pull you away. But discipline gives you the ability to choose long-term benefit over short-term comfort. It separates the talkers from the achievers. It separates the dreamers from the doers. And eventually, it separates the old version of you from the new one. You don't have to wait for a miracle. You don't have to wait for inspiration. You don't have to wait for someone to save you. You save yourself by showing up for your life every single day. That is the real shortcut. Discipline is the engine. Discipline is the force. Discipline is the edge. When you adopt discipline as a lifestyle, everything becomes possible. Every dream becomes reachable. Every obstacle becomes manageable. Every setback becomes temporary. You become someone capable of enduring, adapting, pushing, and rising. And the world responds to that version of you differently. Because a disciplined person is unstoppable. There are moments in your life when you feel like everything inside you is on fire, like every goal suddenly feels possible, every idea shines with potential, and every step toward your future feels incredibly clear. And then, just as quickly, the spark fades. The excitement slips away. The clarity dissolves. It's almost as if someone inside you flipped a switch and dimmed the light. At first, you try to force it back, but it doesn't obey. You try to recreate the feeling, but it doesn't respond. That's the unpredictable nature of motivation. It comes bursting in with swagger, commanding your attention, filling you with energy, but it leaves quietly, without explanation, without apology, and often without warning. Emotion is powerful, but emotion is inconsistent. And if the only engine driving your progress is emotion, your progress will always be unstable. Motivation can start the journey, but only discipline walks the path. Discipline is the grounded, steady, reliable force that stays with you when excitement dies. Jim Rohn often said that discipline is the bridge between your goals and your accomplishments, and the truth is that nothing else plays this role as effectively. Not raw talent, not natural intelligence, not charm, not luck. Discipline is the one thing that turns your intentions into evidence. It is the quiet force that keeps you moving when every other part of you is begging to stop. Many people spend their lives searching for a shortcut to success, a secret, a trick, a hidden formula. But the real shortcut has always been discipline. It's the closest thing to a guaranteed advantage in life. Discipline is the habit of doing what matters, especially on the days when you have no desire to. That is the real hack. That is the real secret. The people who rise above the rest are not the people who feel motivated more often. They are the people who are disciplined even when the motivation disappears. You can want improvement. You can crave transformation. You can dream of a different future. But without discipline, none of those desires take shape. Every dream requires structure. Every intention requires follow through. Every ambition requires repeated effort. Discipline provides the consistent structure necessary to make the dream real. The disciplined person doesn't wait for the right mood. They don't wait for a perfect surge of motivation. They act because action is required, not because emotion is convenient. And here's something most people don't want to admit. The most successful individuals in the world are not superhuman. They don't wake up with magical energy every morning. They don't feel unstoppable every day. In fact, many days, they feel the same resistance you feel. They get tired. They get discouraged. They get overwhelmed. But the difference is that they act anyway. They move forward despite the resistance. They honor the commitment instead of the emotion. They show up because their identity demands it. And that identity, this powerful, unshakable identity, was built entirely through discipline. People often assume successful individuals are born different. But the truth is that they became different through repetition. Their extraordinary results were formed by ordinary actions repeated consistently. They mastered the art of small improvements. They reinforced the habit of showing up. They learned to ignore their excuses. They developed the strength to act even when their emotions rebelled. And over time, those small disciplines compounded into massive, undeniable success. You might look at your own life right now and see patterns that frustrate you, habits that break your momentum, cycles that repeat, potential you feel, but don't fully live out. And maybe you've tried to change before. You've tried to start something new, but after a few days or a few weeks, the momentum fades. You fall back into old behaviors. You lose the spark. You lose the rhythm, and you end up feeling stuck all over again. This isn't because you're weak. It's because you relied on motivation instead of building discipline. Motivation whispers, start now. Discipline insists, continue. Motivation gives you enthusiasm. Discipline gives you results. Motivation is a visitor. Discipline is a resident. If you want to build a life that doesn't collapse every time you feel tired or stressed or unmotivated, you need discipline as the foundation. Discipline is what keeps the house standing when the emotional weather changes. And trust me, the weather always changes. The moment you begin building discipline, everything about your life shifts. You stop belonging to your feelings and start belonging to your commitments. You stop being controlled by impulses and start being guided by purpose. You begin to trust yourself, not because everything you do is perfect, but because you are consistent. That trust becomes a powerful force. It becomes the internal confidence that fuels your decisions, strengthens your identity, and steadies your journey. The beautiful thing about discipline is that it doesn't require perfection. It only requires presence. You don't have to take massive action every day. You just have to show up. And the moment you show up consistently, momentum forms. And once momentum forms, transformation becomes inevitable. People underestimate what consistent effort does over time. They look at one workout and see nothing change. They look at one writing session and see no masterpiece. They look at a single disciplined day and see no life-altering difference. But results don't appear immediately. They accumulate silently. They grow beneath the surface. And then, one day, you look back and realize you've built something impossible to ignore. That is discipline's greatest magic. Every time you do something you don't feel like doing, you strengthen the muscle of self-control. Every small disciplined action is like a brick. Some days you lay many bricks. Some days you lay only one. But as long as you lay a brick, the structure continues to grow. The only way you lose is by not showing up. And once you understand this, discipline stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like the gift it truly is. Because discipline doesn't restrict your life, it expands it. It gives you more power, more clarity, more freedom, more opportunity. Discipline frees you from the impulsive emotions that keep you stuck. It liberates you from the habits that limit you. It protects you from the patterns that sabotage your potential. A disciplined life isn't a smaller life. It is a larger one. It is a life with direction, purpose, momentum, and strength. And perhaps one of the most important truths you'll ever learn is this: discipline becomes easier the more you practice it. The first few days feel heavy. The first few weeks feel challenging. But slowly, something begins to shift. What once felt difficult becomes familiar. What once felt forced becomes natural. What once felt uncomfortable becomes a part of who you are. Eventually, discipline stops being something you do and becomes someone you are. You deserve to experience that version of yourself, the version who doesn't rely on moods or motivation, the version who is in control, the version who follows through, the version who doesn't break promises to themselves. That version of you is waiting, but it cannot appear through emotion alone. It appears through repeated disciplined decisions. You build it one action at a time. And once you meet this version of yourself, you will never want to go back.